What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the garage. Of course, we're doing another motorized bike, but in this case we are using an old 1970s Montgomery motor. So this bike is going to have quite a bit of power. I think you're really going to enjoy it, so stick around. So the base of this motorbike is going to be a little cheap Walmart bike that I bought off of some guy on Marketplace who was missing his eyeball. So I need to get the measurements of the engine that we're using. And then we really just gotta strip down this frame and redo it. I decided to use some little forks that I had off a scooter to connect the bottom part here, but later on you'll see I redo this. Looks something like this. So we're gonna hug this wheel and then bend back and then connect to here. And then I'll have another piece that I slightly bend and then go back down there. I might not even have to touch this top tube, which would be ideal. So let me bend up that tube and see how it works. I didn't show it in the video, but this is actually my second attempt at this. I got this little power sander thing that really helps with notching tubing, which is super cool. I'm a cheap, so 90% of my tools are actually from Harbor Freight. Then at this point it was just a couple back and forths with measuring and cutting and a little physical persuasion. And that just about did the trick, so I welded it on. So here I'm putting my arts and crafts skills from 5th grade to work, and we're doing a cardboard template for some gussets. Then I trace it on some steel and cut it out. Unfortunately, I did have to cut off the top tube, but as you'll see, I can just reuse it. I definitely glossed over making the engine plate, but I just cut it out of the plasma cutter and then bent it in my press. Alright, so I have the engine placed on the bike now. That's 11 horsepower on a bicycle. This is ridiculous, but I think it looks good. The only issue I came across is the carburetor is hitting the frame on this side. So I got some scrap tubing that's already bent, and I'm just gonna go the other direction, and so it'll just kind of be a little extra room there. This is the original top tube, and this is the original down tube. Just so happens that this actually will work. I'll put this right here, and then I think this will actually be able to go right there. And so we got a nice little connected frame. I think that should work. I've definitely been using the Sawzall more for cutting tubing. I get a lot more straight cuts than the grinder, so it's just something I just recently discovered for whatever reason. Then I just ground this down for a better angle during welding. And so for the transmission, we're going to be using a torque converter. I got this from Go Power Sports a number of years ago, and it's been doing pretty well since. I made a custom back plate for it in a previous project, so we're just going to be reusing that. And also check this out, these are the new rims that we're going to be putting on there. So let's go ahead and mount a sprocket on that rim, put it on the bike, and then see if we can line up the transmission and stuff. So I went ahead and bought a sprocket assembly on Amazon. It just needed a little bit of adjustment to get it on the bike, but it worked great. So I just put the tire on the rim, and check this out. That is pretty heavy duty right there. I like that. So nice thick tires. So let's see if it even fits on the bike. So the mounting plates on the bike aren't wide enough. So that's a little bit of a problem. Brute force doesn't solve all my problems. So I ended up just having to redo the whole back end. This was a much better idea. I have the room I need and the strength I need as well. I ended up just completely redoing the rear end, and I'm very glad that I did. So now it's a lot more structurally sound and just looks a lot better. So now let's throw on the torque converter. And then with the torque converter on, I discovered that I'm gonna need a spacer for the rear sprocket, so I'm cutting one out now. I think that should work. But anyway, I love this machine. It has changed a lot of my workflow, so that is pretty great. Okay, so hopefully you can see why I needed this little spacer hub thing. Essentially the issue was the sprocket on the torque converter was way too close to the wheel, and so I had to move this whole sprocket over like about an inch actually. All right, so the torque converter will be on this side. So what I need to do is actually make a spacer right here and then throw another bearing on this side. I think I can actually just reuse this. This is actually a chunk of ABS, I think. Pretty sure it's ABS. Really tough stuff though, and it's a really dense plastic. So the setup of this machine is very similar to my other plasma cutter. You use the same program to set it up, and then you send it to a custom software that it has, and then just send it to the machine. And just like that, we got ourselves a little spacer, and just about fits perfectly. It probably took about 5 minutes to cut this out. So with the spacer on, I was able to line up the chain and then cut it to length. All right, well I got the chain on, but it's a little bit flimsy. I can move the tire back a little bit, but I'm gonna need a chain tensioner anyway, so let's go make one. I'm really loving these CNC machines, man. Like, if you don't have one, I definitely recommend looking into it. I mean, the biggest learning curve is honestly the CAM and the CAD program. Other than that, it's a really easy to get into. And even the programs are really straightforward, and there's tons of tutorials on YouTube. Unfortunately, they still have their quirks. I think mine needs a little bit of a tune-up because all the circular cutouts are a little oblong, and I have to reshape them with a drill. So now that I have the tensioner cut out, I gotta hammer a little bit of shape into them. And then I realized I bent it the wrong way. So let's undo that real quick. And then I welded the bottom brackets to the frame and then added a spring. Okay, next I'm working on the gas tank. So I'm cutting off the original brackets that came with the engine, and then I'm actually going to reuse them to mount to the bicycle frame. Gosh, you think after like 10 years of welding they would be getting better, but anyway, all I have to do is drill out some holes to the frame, and then I can mount the gas tank. Oh, also, that blue stuff on the frame is Bondo. I was just very ashamed of my welds, so I tried to hide them from you. The last thing I want to do is make some foot pegs. So I'm just using some steel tubing and then welding some nuts to them. And then with this setup, I can just bolt on the foot pegs. Alright, so just some last few things that I did. I added some foot pegs. These are off of a motorcycle. I added a bracket for the back of the torque converter for stabilization. And then I also bent up some brackets so that I can adjust the chain tension. I guess it also acts as like a anti-torque, so that when you hit the gas, your wheel doesn't come loose. I'm also really stoked about how the gas tank went in there. We used part of the gas tank that already came with and cut it up and reused it, so that is pretty cool. And then I added a tab down below just for extra stabilization. And then after I welded to the gas tank, there were a couple holes, so I tried to fill them as best as I could with weld, and then I also went over it with some JB Weld epoxy. All right, well, that is it for part 1. Be sure to tune in for part 2. We're gonna get that thing on the road. I'm also thinking about engineering a electric start for it, so hopefully I'll see you there. All right, peace.